Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Peaceful Rage Podcast. Your man, Wes B, my man, Matt Murph. What up, baby boy?
What's happening with you, man?
What's going on, man?
Hey, bro, doing good.
Yo,
man.
so we finally here, man. Everybody was asking us about the podcast.
Right.
When are we gonna follow up on our radio show that we used to have?
Yeah.
And now we got the Peaceful Rage Podcast popping off, man. What's good, though, bro?
Man, hey, first episode, super happy to be doing this,
Yeah.
man. We've been doing a lot of work behind the scenes.
Yes, sir.
Right, so we definitely want everybody to follow us, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all that. Follow, subscribe, at Peaceful Rage Podcast, right?
There you go. That's right. Hit us up on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. We're on all of that, at Peaceful Rage Podcast, all one word. And where we at today, bro?
And so we're at the Jefferson African American Heritage Center here in Charlottesville, Virginia, man. Beautiful facility.
Yeah.
Of course, you know the history.
No doubt.
You know.
For a lot of people who don't know, this is the very first African American school here in the city of Charlottesville, and so we thought it was only right, that we get our taping on here. And as we kick off this opening episode, you mind telling the good people a little bit about what we're about, man? Like, what's this show about?
Yeah, basically, we had the radio show before, right? Good vibes. We had a lot of listeners, man. A lot of people were asking us when we're gonna get back together and do what we do. Yeah. I think we're also two opinionated brothers. Yeah. And we get into the middle of things. We approach things from different angles, and so I think it's just two woke brothers that value masculinity, manhood, fatherhood, leadership, and we feel a sense of responsibility to our community. And so a lot of times we're in positions to where we're able to speak to and empower people, and this is another platform for us to do that.
No doubt. So my man, Matt Murph, man, I like to call him Black Jesus. For those of y'all who don't know, Black Jesus, Bob Marley, Nostradamus, he's all of that rolled up in one. You know what I'm saying? Yo, this dude knows everything, but not in a narcissistic way. Like, not like, he gonna try to shit on you or anything like that. But homie just has a wealth of knowledge. He's one of the few people who, whenever he tells me something, I just shut up, listen, and 9 times out of 10, he's right. Probably 9.7 times out of 10.
I appreciate it. I'll pay you later, man. We are looking for sponsors too, by the way. So you know what I mean? You can hit us up at peacefulragepodcast@gmail.com. But I appreciate that kind of compliment, bro.
Yeah, no doubt. And then we gotta shout out my man Ty Cooper, you know what I'm saying, Lifeview Marketing, UN Comedy. Yo, man, Ty Cooper, he's recording this today, you know what I'm saying? He got us real official, like y'all look on our Instagram page and y'all will see the setup and all this, man. It look like this $1 million setup right here or something. Right. We don't owe you $1 million or nothing, right, Ty?
Right.
Well, we don't have $1 million anyway, so
you know what I'm saying? He gonna try and bill us on the back end.
See,
I remember
decline those invoices, bro. Decline those invoices.
Right. When we get big. Right. Yeah. So anyway, man, I thought today would be a good, so being our first episode, it'd be good to kind of introduce a bit of who we are, what motivates us, how we got here, and again, talk about, what we want to do with this podcast, what we hope our listeners take away from this podcast.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people come into it knowing based off of everything from the city council and, all the stuff that's transpired here in Charlottesville. And then, as I alluded to, when I say this is one of the most thorough dudes that I know and a person who has a wealth of knowledge, I think a lot of people would love to hear more of your story and kind of how you got to this point at which you are, how you accumulated so much. And my man Murph got stories for days. So Murph, you want to tell the people a little bit about yourself, you know what I'm saying, kicking off the episode?
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Yeah, absolutely, stories for days. Well, one of the things I will say is, as far as the podcast goes and what we're doing and kind of the way that this is set up is Wes and I both will look out on the horizon and see a goal, and we'll agree like that's the place we need to go. But we may take very different paths, right, on how to get there. You know what I mean?
That's true.
And so, just as he kind of appreciates and values my input, I do the same with you because, you're bringing another angle. We have a slight age difference. I ain't that old, even though you try and play me, right? But so we have a slight age difference. So we come from two very different places. Yeah. And so even now as we tell our stories, you're going to kind of hear some of those differences and pick up on how it is we can agree on so much, but differ on other things. I think it's going to be interesting and entertaining to folks. So
we disagree on a lot, but oddly enough, it seems like we agree on the same things. It's weird how it works out. We kind of like the yin and yang. Me and Merce from the Midwest. I'm from down south. I'm dark skin. Wesley Snipes. New Jack City. Not snitching on nobody like Nino. We got Light Bright over here. So it just goes that way. You know what I'm saying, man?
Let's go.
My bad, Black Jesus. Don't shock me now.
Good. Yeah, but that's real talk though. So we're coming from two different angles. I grew up in the Midwest. You came up in the South. Our families looked very different. Even like our just formation into manhood looked different.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And the roles that people played in our lives. And so, I grew up, like I said, in Ohio, came up in a very diverse family.
Yeah.
My dad is black, my mom is white. They were both military brats. And so in many ways, all they saw was green.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, the topic of race and things like that in our house was very different than probably in a lot of other places. And then I had all kinds of friends.
Yeah.
My best friend on my block, the dude 2 doors down was Greek. The guy across the street was Italian. Down the street from him, the dude was Chinese. My black friends in the neighborhood, 2 blocks over was some Mexican kids, other dudes from Palestine. So Christmas time was bananas. You had every color at the house.
Yeah.
And so I was always used to this kind of robust, diverse kind of environment that I'm hearing different experiences and ideas, and it just shaped me to appreciate people in a particular kind of way.
So even growing up in all of this, how did you learn to identify like your blackness? How did you come to understand like who you are?
Right.
Because I know a good bit about you, but for those who don't know, and I think we're going to have a lot of listeners who come from similar backgrounds where they may come from kind of a melting pot of sorts.
Right.
And we see a lot of people, especially kind of in this quote unquote woke age, where everybody's talking about they're being woke or they're trying to figure out who they are in the spectrum of being black, because there's no one way to be black. How did you find your black malehood in that world in which you were growing up in?
Right. That's a good question, man. I think in one way, growing up interracial in a predominantly white context in many times, you know what I mean? I instantly recognized that difference, but at the same time, I valued relationships in such a way that, race wasn't always a primary factor in my interactions when I was little.
Yeah.
And as I got older, I got to see, I think I was probably about 11 or 12, and I remember sitting there thinking, it doesn't matter what my background is, as far as if my mother's white or my grandmama's this, or America sees me as a black man.
Yeah.
And I was able to come to terms with that, as a young man. Like, I see and experience people treating me in wonderful ways, and they don't look like me, and I love those people and they love me. And at the same time, when I step outside this front door, none of that matters to whoever it is I might run into, whether it's the police or so some white supremacists or whatever the case is. And so being in that context, often being the odd man out, the different one, you know what I mean? I was aware instantly, and I just kind of matured into an understanding of what it means to be a black man in America.
In your opinion, what does it mean to be a black man in America today? Like, how do you kind of describe a black man in America? Because I think even like we joke a little bit about there's an age difference, but it's not really. I think Murph is like
75.
Yeah. Oh, man. I was gonna say you're 7 years older than me, but I don't even think it's that much.
I mean, maybe like 10.
Yeah, like 10 years older than me.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of a gap, right? But I think because of our generational difference, quote unquote, we may view things differently. What does it mean to be a black man today to you?
Wow, I'll just speak from my own black experience, right? Because we definitely don't think that blackness is a monolith, right? By
Not
any
at all,
means.
right?
Right, and so for me, I think it's operating with a sense of awareness of how I'm perceived, and part of that's just me, and part of it's just like that's just the way that I'm thinking about things. But I also recognize that America conditions people to think in certain ways, and so in general, I can expect to be thought of or seen in this way or that way. For example, I'm like 6 foot tall, right? So I'm not a real big dude, but there's been plenty of times I'm walking down the street and I see the lady switch her purse.
Right.
I see people lock their door in front of me. I've seen people in the parking garage look back and see me and hit their clicker one more time on the thing.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And so, I've been followed around in stores, all these things. And so I've had those things happen to me. And at the same time, I don't let them impact me in such a way that, I'm bound by or feel less than anyone else.
Yeah.
I just deal with the reality that is.
Has there been some benefits to you being a black man?
Of course.
In America?
I believe so. You know what I'm saying?
You might share a couple of those? There's a PG show now. There's a PG.
Is it PG?
No, well, it's not. But
yeah. Well, no, I think one thing that I do appreciate, when it comes to various cultures, and specifically talking about black culture, is there is a view and a perspective oftentimes that we'll hear when we talk amongst brothers about things that we experience in life. Yeah. And having that angle, I think, a lot of times helps me to be not as disappointed because my expectations really aren't that high.
Right.
That makes sense.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, you start getting into like specific benefits of being a black man. I mean, it just probably depends on where you are and what you're doing, right?
Right.
Leave it at that.
Right, for sure. For sure, we'll leave it at that.
But real talk, so you know what I mean, like I came up in the 80s, you know what I mean, and that brings a certain kind of I think mindset and approach to life. You came up a little bit later. Eric, talk a little bit about like where you were at when you were coming up, what was going on.
Yeah, so I mean, I grew up. All my family's from Atlantic Beach, South Carolina, and my mom's side of the family is from a place called Burgess, South Carolina. But I grew up in Atlanta. So when I was maybe like 1 or 2 years old, if I'm not mistaken, my mom's, my pops, we all moved to Atlanta. I was the only child at the time. And I was growing up there. My pops bounced on us, so it was just me and my mom's for a minute. And I was growing up in a city in which, like, really black people was all that I knew.
It was a black neighborhood.
Yeah, black neighborhood. Yeah. I mean, and I grew up with a sense of black pride, right? So I had always seen, like, every mayor that I knew from, I mean, again, this is just my age. I'm growing up in the 90s, right? So Mayor Shirley Franklin, Mayor Bill Campbell, like, they're all black. You know, my fire chief was black. The police chief was black. Most of my teachers were indeed black. So I always knew, although in my neighborhood it may not have been the best, right? But I always knew that I would be able to do, quote unquote, whatever it is that I wanted to, because I learned very early on that the world was bigger than my block. And then maybe when I was about 8 or 9 years old, I watched the Autobiography of Malcolm X. And my mom has little videos of me walking around saying, "I am Malcolm X," right? And I don't know why, right? Like, I don't know why.
At the end of the movie?
Yeah, like at the end of the movie with all the kids, like I would be in the grocery store, all kind of stuff, just saying that, right? Like, yo.
Did you have a hat? Did you have Malcolm X?
Yeah, I had the hat too, dog. I was with it. Yeah, like I don't know why it, like I drew to it so much, but it was something that I just really learned early on, just having the sense of black pride and being proud of your heritage and proud of who you are. Doesn't mean that you dislike anyone else,
right?
But you really have an affinity for those who look like you. I will say that as I got older, and I really like to read. It's crazy, yo. I think my middle school teacher, she bought me Uncle Tom's Cabin. I was like the 8th grade. So the book is so thorough, like I couldn't even read it. I couldn't break it all down. I wasn't even, couldn't handle it. So she got me the Cliff Notes. And then I was reading it and I was like, oh, yo, so this is like America where we live. Outside of Atlanta is really different. Like there's a lot of other stuff going on, right? And that kind of piqued my interest in terms of understanding the plight of our people,
right.
And understanding the sacrifice that a lot of people made. And again, man, my neighborhood wasn't always the best. Even when I would go back to visit my family in Atlantic Beach, South Carolina, like, it was a little hectic at times, but I was always told I was special, right? Like I would always hear from the cats in my neighborhood, from the dudes around the way. They just always would tell me like, yo, you're gonna be somebody. Don't let the neighborhood down. That's what I would always hear. Don't let the block down. Don't let us down.
So you had almost a sense of responsibility early on.
Yeah.
Just in the way you conducted yourself.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, also just a sense of understanding that, like, you have to be able to, one, give back. Like I remember seeing dudes around my way in my neighborhood, the hustlers, doing the turkey drives. That's one of the reasons why I think I do it now. Other than that, and watching New Jack City, and
Right.
Brown, like Brown was like my role model growing up before he snitched. Right. But like, and because I like the fact that like he would give back to the community. He was doing some real crazy stuff. But that was what I was seeing like in my neighborhood. It was like the same thing.
We'll talk about that.
Yeah. I mean, I really enjoyed that kind of stuff. I would see cats around my way, make sure that the dudes had what they needed to play AAU basketball. Like they always made sure that we were good. So the sense of community and making sure you take care of each other, and again putting on for the neighborhood, like taking care of the block. That's always been something that's been big for me. And I guess as I've gotten older, it's just been the same as I've found my voice. I would also personally say, like, I think I'm 31 years old now. I've just found my quote unquote voice in being comfortable in terms of who I am as a black man in America. Understanding that while I believe the world is my oyster, I do know also, even with a doctoral degree, you can't get anything higher than that. For many people, they still see me as Dr. Nigger.
Right.
Like I look on my Twitter and my mentions right now, I get called nigger every single day. I get death threats every single day, right? And I understand that's because of some of the choices I've made in terms of standing up for civil rights and whatnot. But I believe firmly, like, this is what I was made to do.
So let me ask you this. So you look at that on like the macro level, what I mean? It's having this sense of community, having this sense of pride in your neighborhood. And then we were just kind of comparing stories, my parents are still married. They've been married for 40 plus years.
Yeah.
You didn't grow up in that setting.
Nah.
Yet we both value fatherhood immensely.
Yeah.
How old were you when you had your first child?
I was 22. 22,
Okay.
I was a senior in college right before I was about to graduate, and my daughter Michaela was born. My homie Kwame K. We used to call her when we was in school the draft. Like, yo, you don't have a kid while you're in school. You try to get out the draft. Don't get drafted. Don't get drafted. And I thought I dodged it, but yeah, I had the blessing. She changed my life, man. What about you? How old were you when you had your first
18.
child?
I was
18.
Yeah.
Okay.
Senior year.
Young jit.
That September. Senior year, she came up pregnant, man. I was holding my son in the graduation picture.
Hey,
man.
hey,
You know what I mean?
hey,
yeah.
hey.
Yeah. So, I was a kid.
How did fatherhood change you?
Man, well, I will say this. I remember when I was probably about 11 or 12.
Yeah.
I remember sitting at the counter, and I was like, eating, and my mom talked to me. She said, let me just say something to you. I was like, yeah. She said, if you ever have a baby, you will take care of it. I'm like 12. I'm like,
You like what?
okay, mom, right? But that just kind of stuck with me.
Yeah.
And then when that time came, that was a part of me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I couldn't deny him. I couldn't just kind of push him to the side. Couldn't act like he wasn't there. And so it impacted me. It changed everything.
Oh,
that's dope. I was going in a crazy way, and I can't say that I stopped completely right when he was born, but I will say he made me think of things from a longer term perspective as well. Like here it is, this young person gonna grow up, and he needs to know and hear from me.
Yeah.
And I've been given the opportunity for that. When he was born healthy, I'm like, man, this is just a beautiful blessing.
It's
you know?
lit. Yeah,
So, yeah.
I would say kind of similar. I remember right before my daughter was born, like even while her mother was pregnant, my biological pops and I, it was hectic, right? So, we had ups and downs. We went through a point in time where like he was like my role model. That was my guy. And then, drugs kick in and whatnot, and we kind of fell out, and we just had ups and downs. And I remember like during that time frame, when I was in college and whatnot, he and I really weren't rocking at all. And I was thinking to myself, like, I don't want to be like that, right? So it wound up being a very much so a motivating factor. But then while I was in college, every Sunday, my uncle, my mother's uncle, he's a pastor in a city called Manning, South Carolina, which is like 45 minutes from where I went to college. And every Sunday he made me come to his crib. And I'd be like, man, I'm not trying to, like, sometimes we get turned on Saturday. He like, nah, you be here.
Right.
Go to church with him and then come back to his crib. My aunt would cook. But really what he was teaching me was like, it was like manhood training.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And it was like showing how a man takes care of not only himself, but his family, his community. And I remember being terrified to tell him that I was about to have a daughter. And he was like, yo, I know you're going to do the right thing. You know what I mean? Like you got the training. And I was still growing up, man. It's been well documented how crazy I used to tweet.
Right, yeah.
But like I was still growing, but I had that foundation like, yo, similar to what you said, you have a child, you're going to take care of it. If you're going to be in a community, you need to give back everything that you can that people gave to you to get where you are right now. And I think that's probably part of the reason why, like I see you now, you're an outstanding father. And I think for me, probably it's the same reason why being a father and being a dad and being a person in the community is so important, because we both know that we have an obligation to do it. May not be in the exact same way,
Right.
but we have an obligation to give back and take care of our community. Why do you think that may be, quote unquote, perceived as something that brothers don't do today? Like, we hear that, right? Like, yo, man, brothers don't care. They don't show up to meetings. We don't do X, Y, and Z. Like, I don't think that to be true.
Right.
But why do you think that's sometimes the notion?
I mean, I think we've been programmed in a way, we've been conditioned to believe certain things, about people groups, and so we can look at the history of America and see how traditionally society thought of Irish people, or how they thought of Jewish people, or how they thought of Italian people, and then over the course of years, that perspective has changed, right? And I think it's the same thing for black people, particularly black men. There's certain ideas and stereotypes that have been ground into us.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so I went to this implicit bias training the other day.
Yeah. It's real.
And you start talking about, I'm not biased, I'm not prejudiced, and you start going through these steps, and you're starting to see, wow, I do associate this with this people group, and I associate these things with that people group.
Yeah.
And it's a real thing. So I think brothers are doing things. One, they're not given credit for it. Two, the stereotype is that they're not doing those things. And So I think part of what we have the responsibility and the desire to do with this show is to show how those things are happening, show those good things. Brothers are doing amazing things. They might just be getting the publicity. You know what I mean? So we just want to continue to be a platform for people to be able to share those good things that they're doing.
No doubt. No doubt.
So let me ask you this, then going back to our life story. So school, had the baby, doing the thing, right? And then
literally.
Right. and then you come to Charlottesville. So you come from Black Atlanta. You come from South Carolina to Charlottesville, which is not that.
Definitely not.
Right? I mean, somebody say Monticello rolled down the hill.
For
and the
real.
plantation continues.
Some would very well say that.
Some may say that. So what was that like, making the transition as a young man into kind of independence and manhood, but more specifically, because we want to speak to black men here, what was that transition as a black man from that environment to where you came to Charlotte?
Man, it was extremely difficult, right? And I think it was one of the more trying times that I've had in my life. Culture shock for sure. I mean, I grew up in Atlanta, and then when I would go visit my family in South Carolina, it's basically around black people. I went to a HBCU. I'm accustomed to that kind of culture, and then I moved to a place that is only 19% African American. And the ideology and the thought process in terms of how we do things was very difficult. Also, when I moved to Charlottesville, I didn't know anyone. I had met two dudes, shout out to YQN and Tony Payne, at a basketball tournament back in South Carolina. I was helping my old coach, and they had their AAU team there. So I met them that summer. I was like, oh, Charlottesville, I'm moving there this summer. They're like, all right, holler at us when you get here. But outside of them, I literally knew no one. So when I first moved here, I would stop every black person that I saw. Like, no bullshit. Stop every single one and ask them, yo, where are the black people? Like, where do we hang out at? And people would look at me like I was crazy, because I was longing for the community that I had come from and that I was accustomed to. So, it was a difficult transition because the social scene isn't the same. The sense of community that I was accustomed to wasn't the same, but I kind of thought of it also as an opportunity. Like, well, this is what I'm accustomed to back home and back down south. How dope would it be if we could recreate that here in a place in which people don't think that things like that can happen, especially in my age demographic? And I kind of set out to say, like, yo, let's do that, and started getting involved in the community, started hanging out a lot in West Haven, kicking it in First Street, meeting a lot of those guys over there and the people there, and started doing community days and back to school bashes and all of that stuff, just getting acclimated to the community, but still longing for something else. And it made me really angry, right? So sometimes it would come out even after I became a teacher, and like I deferred law school. I had already started this boxing club with kids, trying again to create that community. I was longing for what I was missing back home, back down south. And when you're young, especially brothers, right? Like, I want a lot of us to understand, like I said earlier, I don't really believe I came into kind of just being comfortable and understanding who I am and growing as a man until maybe a year or two ago.
Right.
So when you're in your second adolescence, you're 22 through maybe 28, 29, you're still growing. You're still trying to figure out who you are. And I would be just upset sometimes and mad at the world while having to put on this happy face for everybody else, pretending as if I had it all together, pretending as if like, I know what to do. Here's how we're going to create this sense of community. And it played out in a lot of different ways. It played out in me, doing different things to women, not necessarily being as upfront and honest to them because I'm not valuing them the way I should. I wasn't valuing myself the way I should. So I would just, wild out, want to take trips here, take trips there. I want to have as much fun as I can and create my own utopia before coming back to reality. I'm also fresh out of college for the first time in my life, having a little bit of money, and having my own spot. And, tricking it all off, right? Like, just doing all kind of different things. But this community also taught me, like, meeting brothers like yourself, meeting Todd, meeting Quentin Harrell, meeting a lot of different brothers, Sarad, OG Herb Dickerson, Eddie Harris, a lot of people here who just taught me, like, little brother, you can be an elected official, you can be a community person, but you got to be okay with yourself first. Right. And see, I was really blessed to have a lot of OGs throughout my life, but especially in that pivotal time, 22 to 30, 22 to 28, have older brothers teach me and show me, like, and tell me, little brother, slow down.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, you're a king. You need to make sure that you understand that what you project and what you intake, what you put in is what you're gonna put out.
Right.
And understand that you don't know everything. Slow down. You don't always have to be as fast. You don't always have to be first. You don't have to be the loudest, right? And I was blessed to have that. But unfortunately, I don't think that a lot of brothers my age have the same thing. So we just repeat cycles because we're literally just going off of what we know, and we really don't know a damn thing. And people think because we're older, we should know, or because you have a certain amount of education, you should know. But if you don't have those quote unquote life experiences or anybody to slow you down and show you what's what, you're gonna be out here lost in the wilderness.
Right. No, that's good. That's good. I mean, I think just getting that good game from wherever you can get it, you know what I mean, is important. And we miss out on a lot of that because, again, things that we'll talk about in upcoming episodes, but we talk about the role of manhood and fatherhood and those examples that are set. So you got a young brother that lives in a community where, 6, 7, 8 out of 10 young black males get snatched out into incarceration. They don't get to see what a brother looks like at 26, 27, 30 doing well because he's locked up. You know what I mean? And or Pops wasn't there, and or that male figure wasn't there, and so you're right. So that cycle continues. It's just this pattern of adolescence, if you will, and we learned how to break out of that. You know what I mean? But that was with help. You know what I mean? And so
no one gets anywhere without help.
Right. So even thinking about, you making the transition here, I know for me moving from Ohio to Virginia, where I was at initially, I had a hard time with the lack of diversity. Like, I'm like, it's just black and it's just white, but it wasn't just that. It was like there was a whole nother, black Southern culture in many ways that I didn't fit into.
Because you're from the Midwest.
Right, I was too abrasive or too loud or too, you know what I mean? Like, I just said it too plainly because the Southern niceties, right? And so I just wrestled with some of that stuff, man. And so, we all transition, and it takes some of us longer or shorter periods of time to be able to do that. But at the end of the day, man, we got to be able to get there and say, hey, here's some things that we need as men. Here's some things we need in the community, and all of us should embody those things. We're going to do different things, but we should embody and value these things over here, and that's the only way we're going to get anywhere.
What kind of tools did you have to develop to be able to deal with the community here? Right? Because, while Charlottesville is indeed different, I think we are a microcosm of what a lot of places are like in Atlanta, especially now, like people kind of, again, growing into this sense of wokeness and understanding who they are. But you are surrounded by a lot of people who may not look like you, who may not understand you, and not just from a racial perspective, as you broke down, is geographical, is maybe age, is just culture. Like, what kind of tools did you have to develop to be able to quote unquote survive?
I think I just honed my people skills, because we started talking about the differences between the two of us, right? You got your PhD. I didn't go to college, you know what I mean? So I got my high school diploma, but that's it. But at the same time, I feel like I can stand with the best of them.
Oh, no doubt.
And I've had plenty of conversations with people that were, in the fields of work that I used to be in, and that would call me with degrees. And they had the book wisdom, the book knowledge, but it was, I'm living this thing, and they're trying to figure out how to apply it. Like, Mark, let me ask you a question real quick. And that's cool. But so I recognize that whether or not I had a formalized education in a town that idolizes education, you know what I mean? I'm really not that far off from these cats. You know what I mean? And so just coming to terms with
so that confidence, that sounds like you developed a level of confidence. Where did that confidence come from?
Man, I mean, I think valuing and appreciating what I've learned through my experiences and some of the unique life experiences that I've had that no one can take away from me. Things that have shaped me because of what I've seen. You know what I mean? Like, you can't take that from me. And so just at the end of the day, when you are confident as an individual, that encourages confidence in others. And in turn, that encourages their confidence in you. You know what I mean? And so that you just build from there. And so if I can say, we're coming from two different places, but I respect you as a man, as a professional, and I expect the same, then we can do something.
I bet you don't even remember the first time I met you.
You know what? I was trying to think about the other day.
Yo, so look, I remember the first time I met you, you had just came here to start your new gig, and you sent me an email. It's like, yo, people in the community say you one of the dudes I need to talk to. I just want to kick it and build with you. And I was like, man, who is this dude, man? I got enough stuff to do. And I remember when I first walked in your office, I'm like, yo, he here? Like, word? So and then they got you, this light-skinned dude with locks working here? Like, yo, what's this dude angle? Like, is he gonna be mad weird? And I just remember like something that you just said. I thought like he was gonna be mad weird.
Right.
But I remember what you said like just now. It made me think. You said you honed your people skills, and I genuinely took from you after our first encounter that this is just a genuine dude. Right? Like he's not here, he's not trying to run game, he's not trying to get over on anybody. Right. And I think if we could tell anything to our younger brothers or even our older brothers is that like being genuine, right? But also being confident, as you alluded to, will get you so far ahead in life. Not being cocky, because there's a difference in the two. Right. And I can tell you about some pitfalls from being cocky and overconfident. Yeah. But you can be humble. But you can also be confident and understanding like, yeah, I do belong here. And like, I really have appreciated that from our relationship. And I mean, you'll call me on my shit and tell me when I'm wrong. And also, you know, when we disagree on a lot of stuff, you know, but like you try to tell me the Lakers ain't the best team ever. But, you know what I'm saying? It's a lot of stuff that, again, we may not see it completely eye to eye, but I appreciate your genuineness. Right. And I wonder, like, how do we get more of us to understand that? That's probably another episode.
That's another episode, yeah. Now, I appreciate that. I think at the end of the day, man, something you kind of walk away with, you know, when we are confident with who we are and our role, right? Yeah. People recognize that, and one of the things that I've heard a lot of people talk about is, you know, haters. They always the detractors, all these things. Yeah. But if you're confident in who you are, I can encourage you in what you do. Because one, I'm not trying to be you. I'm not trying to take away what you do. I'm not trying to take away your shine. Yeah. We could be doing the same things. Yeah. But we got different lanes, you know, and so I think again when you operate with that respect for people, that confidence within yourself, and value in the role that we all have to play, man, you can get a lot of stuff accomplished, no matter if you look like everybody else or if you don't. You might have specific challenges because of the differences, but at the end of the day, you can still get stuff done.
I like that. Well, yo, that's gonna wrap it up for the first initial episode of the Peaceful Rage podcast. Not bad, bro. You all right for you know, you all right.
I know. I have my notes.
You had your notes? You all right. But yo, man, be sure to subscribe and follow us on YouTube at Peaceful Rage Podcast. Hit us up on Instagram, Twitter, as well as Facebook at Peaceful Rage Podcast, all one word. If you're looking to advertise with us, you can also send us an email at peacefulragepodcast@gmail.com. Yo, we're gonna be trying to drop these every week, right?
Every week.
All right, so you can catch us where on all of the iTunes, Spotify, all that good stuff.
Everything's gonna be on the spot.
All right. So yo, we'll be back next week. Appreciate y'all rocking with us. Shout out to my man Ty Cooper, LifeView Marketing. Shout out to Andrea Douglas, Dr. Andrea Douglas at the African American Heritage Center here in Charlottesville. Dr. Wes Bellamy, my man Matt Murph. Word. Peaceful Rage Podcast. See you next week.
Peace.